How are you, sir? I'm not being able to attend you. Yeah. All good. All good. हमारे
Please be seated. All the participants will begin this session in next 5 minutes. पार्टिसिपेंट को बुलाते हैं ना 5 मिनट All the participants, please be seated. We'll be beginning this session very shortly. I'll request from our online team to accept the speakers who are joining for the session. Dr. Devendra Kumar, he'll be joining along with Lieutenant General Dr. Rakesh Sharma. Bahram Afzian has already joined. Dr. Ivan Ellis will also be joining. Okay. So all the participants will now be beginning the session. So may I request a bit of silence from everyone? Yeah. So I welcome you to the third session of the Siang Dialogue, which will be based on shaping the future, India's role in a transforming global order. In this session, we'll have Dr. Shriparna Pathak, Associate Professor, O.P. Jindal Global University, in the distinguished speaker panel. Along with her, it will be Air Commander S.P. Singh, VSM, Senior Fellow, Center for Air Power Studies, Major Amit Bansal, who is an Army veteran and military expert, Mr. Tenzing Sanjay, Tibetan poet and activist. Online, Dr. Devendra Kumar will be joining, who is Assistant Professor, Riva University, Bengaluru. Mr. Bahram Afzian is joining us from Armenia, who is the founder and board chairman of the Network State. With that, we'll have Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, who is a distinguished fellow from Center for Land Warfare Studies. Dr. R. Ivan Ellis as the research professor, U.S. Army War College. And Mr. Prakash Nanda, who is the General Secretary of FCC. I'll now like to initiate this session by inviting Dr. Shriparna Pathak for her opening address on this issue. Ma'am, over to you.
How many minutes do I have? 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, each speaker will have 10 minutes. And before we proceed further, I'll just take a moment to present bouquets to all our distinguished speakers.
Thank you so much.
So each speaker will have 10 minutes to make their addresses. And with now, not wasting any much time further, I'll now hand over to Dr. Shriparna Pathak. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Red Lantern Analytica, once again. I'm going to quickly dive into the topic. The topic is shaping the future and India's role in a transforming global order. Now, power dynamics in Asia have been in flux for over a decade. The older term Asia Pacific has been replaced by the 21st century phase, the Indo Pacific. States in and beyond the region have been concerned about ensuring its security as well as economic development. To pursue this goal, different approaches have been used by different countries, some followed by China, some followed by the US. But are there just two ways to, or just two choices in this whole, gamut of choices that we have? Is there a third way out? Very often, when there's a talk about a third way out, Europe is envisaged. But then again, Europe, unfortunately or fortunately, cannot be the third way out in this epoch of history because it's been responsible for colonization and a host of human rights violations. Also, it doesn't really have the economic wherewithal currently. In the global south, again, a term which has gained a lot of traction in the last few years, India finds a space as a leading actor, if not the leading actor. Now, due to the paucity of time, I'm not going to cover India's role in all the major regions of the world. I shall just focus on Southeast Asia. Now, despite India's historical ties of culture, etc., economic ties, especially with a focus on the tech domain, becomes important to understand what India is trying to do in Southeast Asia. See, in order to establish global hegemony, it's important that every actor first focuses on a region. That's been the case for the US, which is the reigning hegemon of the international system. China is trying to do that. For India, also, eventually, maybe in the next 30 years, if it really wants to be the hegemon, then it has to focus on a region, which is why Asia becomes important. So, coming to Southeast Asia, just a few quick examples. At the 19th East Asia Summit in 2024, last year, Prime Minister Modi reiterated India's long-standing policy of supporting the unity and the centrality of ASEAN. He went on about the similarities between India's Indo-Pacific initiative and ASEAN's outlook on the Indo-Pacific. He mentioned free, open, inclusive, prosperous, and rules-based Indo-Pacific. What does that mean? I'll come to it in a bit. India sold the BrahMos missiles to Philippines last year, much to the angst of China. Vietnam, Indonesia, and the UAE also have shown interest in the BrahMos missiles. Last year, Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chan's visit to India, during that, the two countries signed 9 agreements. What are those 9 agreements? A, they definitely focus on what's the strong points of the two economies. We are both agrarian economies still. So there were cooperation agreements in the realms of agriculture, customs, radio, television, tech, etc. So it's important to understand how does India really position itself. All of this might just sound like, okay, this is just a narrative. ASEAN is a very important trading partner for India. It accounts for 11% of its total global trade. Bilateral trade reached 122.67 billion US dollars in the financial year of 2023-24. There's this India-ASEAN comprehensive economic cooperation, etc. While there are a lot of realms in which India and ASEAN cooperate, I want to speak about the connectivity bit. India and ASEAN have been working to improve connectivity through the India-Myanmar-Thailand Trilateral Highway, the Kaladan Multimodal Transit Transport Project. India is also keen for the expansion of the Trilateral Highway to Cambodia, to Laos, and Vietnam. All 3 are countries in which the Chinese influence, economic influence per se, have been really great. India is also building infrastructure in Indonesia, in the Sabang port in Aceh province to be specific, wants to serve as a deep sea port, providing India with greater access to Southeast Asia. It is also assumed that it's to reduce Chinese influence in the region. Since 2016 in Vietnam, India has engaged in a lot of quick impact projects. What are these quick impact projects? These basically support modest socio-economic infrastructure, building of classrooms, old age homes, irrigation, development of canals, and so on. In Cambodia, again, quick impact projects have produced a lot of sustainable development. India offers grants for assistance for the implementation of small projects with a capital cost of 5,000 billion US dollars for socio-economic development, upgrading of physical infrastructure, which includes roads, local community health centers, and so on. India has also provided 65.20 million US dollars to Cambodia for water for water development and transmission line projects. In Laos, India has supported the construction of drinking water facility at a school in Pha O Temple of the Luang Prabang province. There are much more, but I'll quickly, because I'm running short of time. In Myanmar, there has been a project for the establishment of a modern integrated checkpost at Tamu with the government of Myanmar. Under the India-Myanmar Border Area Development Program, roads and schools in Chin State and Naga self-administered areas also are being worked upon. 9 townships have been identified. 82 villages have benefited already from the programs. Coming to Timor-Leste, the government of India has approved a grant in aid to Timor-Leste. There have been multiple infrastructure projects. Indian mission has transferred $100,000 to Timor-Leste in March 2010 alone. In 2024, when the president of Timor-Leste, Dr. Jose Ramos Horta, he visited India to attend the 10th Vibrant Gujarat Global Summit, Prime Minister Modi also offered assistance to the country for capacity building, human resource development, quick impact projects, basically. I'm going to quickly, if you don't mind, that Word document can be displayed on the screen. While we're trying to do that, there's been a flurry of visits just in 2024 between India and ASEAN countries. This runs into about 3 pages, and I'm just talking about 2024, not even 2023 or 2022. I'm just going to quickly mention the first. Prime Minister Modi's visit to Bandar Seri Begawan in September 2024 was the first ever bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Brunei. It coincided with the 40th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties. A flurry of agreements were again signed. In 2024, the PM of Malaysia, His Excellency Dato Seri Anwar Ibrahim, visited India at the invitation of Prime Minister Modi. Again, this was the Prime Minister's first visit to India as the PM of Malaysia. Again, plethora of agreements. I'll probably go into the details during the Q&A session. With regards to Vietnam, there was a July visit from the Prime Minister, His Excellency Pham Minh Chanh. It was also the first in a decade. Again, plethora of agreements signed. In January this year, the first India-Malaysia security dialogue was held in New Delhi, chaired by India's NSA, Ajit Doval, and Raja Dato Nursivan bin Zainal Abidin, Director General of the National Security Council of Malaysia. There's been an emphasis on science and technology, people-to-people exchanges, and so on. In Myanmar also, certain things are being done despite the political crisis with ensues. Coming to the US-China question, China has completed more infrastructure projects in Southeast Asia as compared to the US. Because of the BRI, China has invested heavily in several projects across the region. The US's efforts have been more limited in scope and scale as compared to the BRI. US has increased its engagement in the region through certain economic initiatives, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, but these are very new, just about 2 years old. China started much earlier. US has been critical of Chinese lending practices, but the fact is it doesn't offer ASEAN countries much in the way of alternative financing. Western aid has declined, it has shifted away from infrastructure, etc. What US also tries to do is that it tries to protect democratic systems of governance, engages in longer deliberations and discussions for standardization of procedures. This becomes an excellent window for China to step in. There's another fact though. While China is Southeast Asia's largest infrastructure financing partner, there are huge gaps between what Beijing promises and what it actually delivers. There's more than $50 billion in unfulfilled project financing, more than half of this reflecting in projects which have been either cancelled or downsized. According to research by Lowy Institute from 2023, there are 34 infrastructure mega project commitments in Southeast Asia, out of which 24 are from China, 6 from Japan, 3 from ADB, 1 from South Korea. Each of China's competitors have boasted of higher completion success rates for those mega projects. Where does India really fit in? Neither does India aim at promoting its own version of democracy or values like the US does, nor does it entrap countries in debt traps like China does. India doesn't have deep pockets like China, but its quick impact projects have produced better results in the realm of sustainable development or capacity creation, also have better completion rates than China's. But this juxtaposition is rarely spoken about. In the long run, if the momentum can continue, if India can increase its quick impact projects, it augurs really well for Southeast Asia and can be looked upon as the third way out. Might take time, but at least it's not unfulfilled promises. Thank you for your attention, and I will probably take more questions, discuss more during the Q&A.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, moving on, we'll now welcome Amit Bansal, sir, for his address on this topic. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Siddharth. So as Dr. Pathak has clearly brought out how India is expanding its frontiers as far as ASEAN is concerned and with the engagement of various countries. Am I audible? Okay. So we are going to talk about the defense strategy of India. So when we talk about the defense strategy of India, is not only limited to China. You see its location. If you see the way India is located, it is located like a pivot in Indian Ocean region. So the defense strategy cannot be only limited to China. It has to be a combined strategy where we are incorporating 5 factors. We are incorporating China, we are incorporating Pakistan, we are incorporating now Bangladesh, we are also incorporating the Indian Ocean region, and we are also incorporating the various threats emanating through terrorism. So it is going to be a 5-front strategy when we are going to work out a proper defense strategy. And it is the responsibility of India because firstly, we are a pivot. We are located in such a location. We are located at the junctures of major supply routes. Also, we are the most populous country in the world. We are the biggest democracy in the world. So that gives us a mandate to safeguard our interests and also have a comprehensive defense strategy. I'll cover briefly to various countries, China and all. With China, we have got a lot of issues we have pending. We have got territorial disputes. We all know we have got a lot of historical grievances which have been there in the past. Things have been brewing for last 75 years. A lot of gross mistakes have been made by the political leadership, and of course, you cannot go back and correct them now. Both the countries, because of various global issues, because of their own thirst of growing, they have a lot of conflicting national interests. A majority of them are economic in nature. And because of all these issues, historical grievances, territorial dispute, we keep on having bilateral episodes like Galwan and Dokalam and all these kinds of episodes. It keep on happening. It has been happening since 1960s and continue to happen. And one more important thing when it comes to China is that India and China, both the countries are developing their border infrastructure at an alarming rate.
Thank you so much.
Now, where it's going to end is there's no visibility for that. Pakistan per se, the biggest threat with Pakistan we have is the non-state actors, terrorism. And everybody, China has of course kept its eye close on that. We also have old fault lines which are primarily based on religion. And the biggest threat to us is Pakistani establishment, which is so unpredictable. Establishment means their system, all you know, what the military and the bureaucracy structure, which is actually governing their country rather than the politicians. And because of this, Pakistan has always been used as a tool. Earlier, Pakistan was being used as a tool by the US, and now Pakistan is being used as a tool by the China. So ultimately, wherever we go in Indian Ocean, where we go to Bangladesh, we go to China, we go to Pakistan, we go to the Indian Ocean region, at all the places we find China in the base. Of course, Pakistan's proximity to China has increased after the US has pulled out CPAC and all those things. It has got massive military cooperation. A lot of money has been lended by Chinese agencies to Pakistan also. Coming on to Bangladesh, you'll be surprised to know that after Pakistan, Bangladesh is the second biggest military hardware buyer of China. Highest number of military hardware China sold first to Pakistan and then to Bangladesh. Recent coup, we saw the way military has taken over, and then the kind of utter chaos is there in the country. Fanatics are ruling over the country, and you can see everywhere the bloodshed. And when you have a disturbed neighbor like this, it is a big threat to you, because you don't know what kind of threat it is, what kind of threat I'm emanating out of the crowd in Bangladesh, what kind of government is going to come into power, what are going to be their priorities. There's no idea. Terrorism also can develop in Bangladesh. It can develop. There are very, very high chances. And because of these turbulences, the illegal infiltration or refugees is going to be a big problem for us. You can stop some of them, but you cannot stop all of them. Again, linked to China, because China is again, China knows that it is a neighborhood of India. So let's enhance our footprints over there. So their diplomats are aggressively meeting their leadership. China has been developing its footprints in Indian Ocean region at an alarming rate. Initially, it was Sri Lanka. Fortunately, things have not gone so well for China over there. They have got their base in Gwadar. now developing into a military base. They've got a port in Myanmar, Kyakfu port. Djibouti already got a big, huge military base in Indian Ocean region in Djibouti. And because of these kind of efforts of China, it is not only difficult for India to secure its own supply lines, it is difficult to secure the global supply lines also. At the same time, we have got a huge Indian exclusive economic zone. Indian Ocean region is our responsibility. To secure the entire region again is a big problem. You see a lot of inputs are coming that sometimes some ship of China survey ship is surveying the Indian Ocean region. Sometimes some spy ship is moving into Indian Ocean region. So these kind of events are creating turbulence. While we are formulating our defense strategy and overall strategy towards China, these are the pointers which you have to win. Because it's not only the China. It is the entire Indian Ocean region is a vast area. All the factors are for that. We also have to balance out things with the smaller countries like Seychelles, Maldives. We saw what happened last year in Maldives because of China. Again, Chinese hand. Mauritius, Seychelles, all other countries are equally important to us. So India is already engaging with them, already providing help to them. We reach out to Sri Lanka in case of when there was crisis. And once again, terrorism is a big problem for us. So how to do how to strengthen our defense diplomacy? As Dr. Pathak rightly brought out, we are already engaging with the ASEAN countries, selling them a lot of military hardware, engaging them militarily. Our Navy is visiting a lot of, giving a lot of port calls to various ASEAN countries, and it is a big achievement for us. Earlier, it was not happening. Earlier, ASEAN countries were considered as a very, very big stronghold of China. Now it's not happening. And if you see the Chinese perspective, I just say the devil's advocate. So despite of being isolated because of its communism, the Chinese defense diplomacy has been a big tool of achieving its aim, and they call it military operations other than war. They've given a clear name to us, military operations other than the war. So for them, the defense diplomacy is like a military operation other than the war. Understand this terminology. And it has grown manifold in last 2 decades. 20 years, they've grown manifold. You can see what is happening in Nepal. You've seen what is happening in Bangladesh. You've seen what happened in Sri Lanka. You've seen what happened in Maldives. A lot of things are happening in African countries also. And China is moving all out. It's not only the defense diplomacy, but also first selling its hardware to everybody at a cheaper cost. Also engaging them in various things, giving them various kind of reliefs, not only military hardware, but giving them equipment, giving them cheap loans and all those things, basically to acquire them. One of the island of Maldives was also leased to China. Afghanistan, we know recently they have engaged, and we got various intelligence inputs which said that China is engaging increasing its footprints in Wakhan corridor. Now, that is the corridor which is actually connecting China directly to Afghanistan. Why it is like that? Because earlier China had an aim that will develop this so-called China-Pakistan economic corridor, and through Pakistan will get connected to Afghanistan. But now, since a lot of turbulences are there in Pakistan, and because of the rampant corruption, they did not see any end to the CPAC. So they said, okay, let's develop a direct corridor to Afghanistan. And through Afghanistan, you can always reach out to CIS countries and also to Turkey, also to Iran, and also to the European countries. So that kind of corridor is developing with the help of Afghanistan in the Wakhan corridor. Also, we have seen recent inputs where China is constructing multiple routes, not one, multiple routes in Shaksagam Valley. So that Shaksagam Valley is approachable from all the angles. It is constructing one road from north to south, another from the east to west, and another one from west to east. So ultimately making it a very, very critical juncture point, which can also be used in case of a military conflict. Sri Lanka has been a victim, and of course, when you see the eastern countries in case of Asia, which share a common platform like with communism with China, North Korea, Russia, some of the CIS countries, and some of the ASEAN countries like Cambodia and Laos, China is everywhere. They are virtually controlling everywhere where they have a common holding in the form of communism. Let's talk about the Pakistani perspective. So again, when we talk about Pakistan defense diplomacy, is only limited to the very, very limited to Arab countries, where it has been part and parcel for a long time, and also the China. Other than that, we don't see much diplomacy on China. And of course, Indian perspective is it lies in strategic autonomy. We'll discuss the strategic autonomy later. Now, what is happening as the time is changing? We talked about defense. We talked about Chinese footprints. When talked about how we evolve, and the kind of trends are developing in the modern warfare now. Technology is playing a very, very vital role. Very, very. I think we take 2 more minutes. So very, very vital role. We have seen what has happened in Russia-Ukraine war. The way technology is used, drones, satellites, imaging systems, rampantly. People are not talking about the robots, unmanned vehicles, unmanned land vehicles, unmanned aerial vehicles, unmanned boats. We are talking about, and also one of the trend which was visible, that involvement of non-state actors in the war. Russia involved a lot of militias in the war. Ukraine involved a lot of militias in the war. Private militias in the war, paid the to get non-state actors to the war. That is the current trend, which is quite critical. What happened in the Middle East now? Hamas, non-state actor. Hezbollah, non-state actor. Houthis, non-state actor. So we are seeing a very, very clear trend where the non-state actors are getting involved into a proper war among the countries. Technology is making a life miserable. We have seen a lot of. I was going through some papers and found that there have been at least 30 cases in last 4 years where people have been found to mass produce guns by using 3D printers. So you can imagine a terrorist can print bloody guns in his home and create havoc anywhere, everywhere. And there's no end to this threat. There's no. Islamic State has been known to use very, very highly advanced AI-enabled chatbots to indoctrinate people. And you can't make out that you're chatting to a bot. Another way people are now, this is clear evident, there is a weaponization of protests. A neighboring country or an enemy country will not require any weapon to target a country. It can just weaponize the protests. What happened in Bangladesh? Protests were weaponized. What happened in Sri Lanka? Protests were weaponized. It just take little bit of social media, little bit of information warfare, little bit of aggressive campaign to weaponize an entire protest. What happened in India during this, when a few years back, during this farmers' protest, they attacked the country. They climbed the Lal Killa. It is some sort of a weaponization of protest only. So it's also coming as a big tool. I'm talking about the modern trends in warfare. This is also a kind of warfare. And as far as India's preparedness is concerned, we are far off. We are nowhere. We are nowhere. In case of technology, we are nowhere. In case of and nobody knows how to tackle these kind of situations. Talking about the strategic autonomy, I'll take just wind up in 2 minutes. So while people are talking about India's strategic autonomy is because of its non-alignment, I'll call it the time has changed now. We are not following the non-alignment policy anymore. We are following a policy of multi-alignment now. See, India is aligned with Russia, aligned with China also. We are part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We are part of BRICS. India is also part of Quad with the US. India is also part of various organizations, various groups of countries involving multiple kind of alliances. So it's not no longer we are gone are the days where we were non-aligned. Now we are multi-aligned. And of course, it lies how the strategic economy lies. It lies in the multi-element things. And we have to balance out our relationships. Today, we are close to Russia also, we are close to US also, we are close to Europe also. India is openly being called as a mediator in various conflicts. The people have been calling, okay, India can mediate between Russia and Ukraine also. People have been calling that India can also mediate between the Palestine and Israel also. So we are being accepted as a neutral force and a potent force, which can get the things done. So vaccine diplomacy also helped. So with this, I'll conclude, and I would be open to the questions. I'm sorry I took a little more time.
Thank you, sir, for elaborating on this topic. Moving ahead, I'll now invite Tenzing Sanjay, sir, for his address. Over to you. Yeah, I'll request our team that we have a folder on the desktop, which contains few pictures. The folder is named as RLA. So if you can open that folder and project the pictures which it has on the desktop itself.
RLA.
Yeah,
It's written RLA.
yeah. On the desktop itself, you will find a folder called RLA. If you can open that folder, it will contain various pictures.
Further down there.
Just a second, just a
Right
second.
RLA. The folder is called RLA. It's right down there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. So my
It will be done, please. please.
time will start now.
Yeah, yeah.
So, namaste, thank you for inviting me here. My name is Tenzin Sundu. I'm a Tibetan writer and activist. I'm based in Himachal Pradesh, Dharamshala. And as an activist, I've been working for the cause of Tibet in India all this time. I'm born in India, so therefore I have a double duty when it comes to talking about Tibet and voice against China. And I have a special qualification to come and talk here, because I'm the loudest voice against China in this country. And just because I've spoken for independence of Tibet in this country, I've been to jail 16 times. So therefore I have this qualification that I have a voice. And so my talk here today, I'm speaking on 4 different points. I have pictures to go with. My first thing is about the Tibetan narrative. Firstly, in the year 2020, when the Galwan Valley happened, most of the Indian youth, they didn't know where is Galwan Valley. That's mainly because India today, even today in 2025, India does not know what lies across the Himalayas. Because none of the Indian textbooks talk about what is there across the Himalayas. And when I say Himalayas, I'm not talking about a small part in Nepal or Bhutan or Sikkim or anything. Entire region of the Himalayas, from Karakoram se lekar pura Himachal, Uttarakhand, Nepal, सिक्किम, भूटान, अरुणाचल, वहां की बर्मा बॉर्डर तक उसकी पार क्या है भारतीय युवाओं को पता नहीं है. Because the entire cause of Tibet, issue of Tibet has been censored since हिंदी चीनी भाई भाई. और वो पोजीशन आज भी बदला नहीं है. And it's a really high time that this should be changed. Otherwise, when we do not know what lies across the Himalayas, how are we going to protect the Himalayas? So therefore, in the year 2020, when that happened, the Indians, for the Indian military, a short course was created. So the Indian army forces who were posted in the borders, they were given a special course to tell them what are the languages spoken across, what food do they eat, what clothing do they eat across Ladakh, across Himachal Pradesh, across Uttarakhand, across Sikkim, and also across Arunachal Pradesh. What are the tribes? What do they speak? What do they worship? So therefore, Tibet is India's missing link in India-China conflict. Because presently, most Indians very casually keeps on saying China border. It's actually Tibet border. क्योंकि हमारा Indo-Tibetan border police है. When we have IDBP, why do we continue to say China border? So this is the point I want to raise here. The Tibet narrative, there are 3 different narratives. One is the China narrative about Tibet, one is the Indian narrative of Tibet, and then there is the Tibetan narrative. Please show me the second picture. For India, India's narrative about Tibet continues from the British narrative, where British kept Tibet as a buffer zone between Russia's possible danger on the British in India and also China's threat. So therefore, British, they kept Tibet. In a way, there was British influence, and yet far away from Russian influence, far away from Chinese influence. And that continued even today after Pandit Nehruji became the Prime Minister. And since then, very little things have changed. When the Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhiji went there, he again reiterated the same position, and it changed the language changed only at the time when Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the former Prime Minister, went there and he started to say Tibet autonomous region is a part of People's Republic of China. The Chinese narrative is that they were coming to Tibet to liberate and double quotes Tibet from feudal society. Now China is saying that Tibet always been a part of China in history, which was countered only last year when the United States changed its policy saying that Tibet was in history a free and independent country. Now what the Tibetans are saying that we were always free and independent. China invaded Tibet in 1949, and since then there is Chinese illegal occupation of Tibet. And in the passage, we lost more than 1 million Tibetans. Most important monasteries were destroyed, and Tibetan freedom struggle is still going on. At the moment, there are 6 million Tibetans inside Tibet, and they are continuing the Tibetan freedom movement in exile. In India, there is the Tibetan government in exile based in Dharamshala. There is His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tibetan spiritual and political leader, and about 60 to 70,000 Tibetans continuing to live in India as refugees. And then we have almost about 70 to 80,000 Tibetans living in Europe, America, and various parts of the world. This is the Tibetan narrative. I'm coming to my second point. There is the now. Show me the next picture. Tibet, however, is not a small place. It's India's largest neighboring country. India is 3.2 million square kilometer of land. India जो है वो 32 lakh square kilometer है. But Tibet is 2.5 million square kilometer, which makes almost about 2/3 the size of India. And that is completely missing in the larger Indian narrative. Tibet is 2.5 million square kilometers of land. It is the largest plateau and the highest plateau in the world. And where you see China to the east and Mongolia Mongolia to the north, and East Turkestan, which is also under Chinese occupation, to the northwest of Tibet. And Tibet's importance of Tibet's strategic location is Tibet is the headland of all the important rivers in Asia, including China, and also all the important rivers in South Asia. There, China is damming, and electricity goes to China, and China is mining. They are not only killing Tibetans, they are mining Tibet and making products in China, and they're sending it to countries around the world. And therefore, most countries do not talk about Tibet because they are benefiting at the cost of Tibet. Coming to next picture, please. Next picture, please. Next. Next picture. Next picture, please. So now my third point is about the Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh today, India, of course, there is a claim over India over this, and it is part of India today. But that wasn't the case in the past. In the past, Arunachal Pradesh was part of Tibet. And in 1914, the McMahon Line Treaty happened in Delhi. It was a bilateral treaty between Tibet and India, British India. And then when it comes to 1951, in fact, in 2 days, Arunachal Pradesh is going to celebrate the founding of the state, which is 14th of February 1951, when Major Bobkha Ding went to Tawang district and claimed that for India. India is saying Arunachal Pradesh is India's, and China is claiming Arunachal Pradesh as part of what is called a southern Tibet. Now the problem is India insists that Arunachal Pradesh is part of India, but does not recognize Tibet as a free and independent country. Now, if you do not recognize independence of Tibet, then how are you going to validate the importance of the McMahon Treaty. India today recognizes what we call the Tibet Autonomous Region as part of China. And recently, when there was the earthquake in Tibet, Indian Foreign Ministry spokesperson again mentioned the word Tibet Autonomous Region. It's actually Tibet. My last point is, please come to the next picture. My last point is the importance of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Karmapa. Next picture, please. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been living in India as a refugee since 1959. Next picture, please. So here you see the picture of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and His Holiness the Karmapa. His Holiness has been living in India as a refugee since 1959, and he has always been called the guest of India, and only called as a spiritual leader. And His Holiness devolved political authority in 2011, and since then we have been having elected leadership in the Tibetan government in exile. We have elections once in every 5 years. We have 45 members of parliament and a president elected in Dharamshala, and which is the seed of Tibetan government in future in Tibet. At the moment, His Holiness the Karmapa, who is now living in foreign country in Germany, my request is, and also is a desire of all Tibetans, that His Holiness the Karmapa be invited back to India. The case is important because His Holiness the Dalai Lama is now going to be 90 this year, and there's always been questions about his reincarnation and future succession, and also about Tibetan leadership in exile. And His Holiness had said that if the work of His Holiness is not completed during his lifetime, he would be born in a free country. So, and at the time in future, if the situation continues, there will be a need of spiritual leadership, which many Tibetans feel that His Holiness the Karmapa, if he comes back to India, he could play that important role. So with this, I will conclude. Of course, I'm open for discussion if there's any questions or comments. And my last point that I want to say is, at the moment, it may sound harsh. I feel that government of India is in a denial mode when it comes to Tibet, has not been raising the issue of Tibet. But I feel in the larger India-China conflict, Tibet is India's Brahmastra. Thank you.
I'd like to add one sentence to Mr. Tenjin. See, historically, there is no document available. There's no document you can see on the Google which mentions the word Indo-China border.
True, absolutely.
You'll find 1842 Dogra Tibetan Treaty. It mentions Tibet, Indo-Tibet border. You see 1919 Shimla Agreement. You see the McMahon Line Agreement. Everywhere it mentions Indo-Tibet border. No document is available to say that there is an Indo-China border.
And then, sir, for elaborating beautifully on the Tibetan cause. Moving ahead, I'll now like to invite Behram Avzian, who is joining us from Armenia, and he'll be joining us online. So if I may request our online team to put Behram Avzian on the pin-up to the Google Meet session, and we'll also like to invite him for his address. If you can unmute yourself, Behram sir, and begin with your address, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be here to hear so many interesting opinions and projects as well. I'm gonna be brief, and we'll talk a bit about India as a civilizational power, and India in the nearest future, what the Indians need to do in order to kind of play the civilizational player role in the world. First of all, in my opinion, as a founder of the network state, which kind of is a futuristic concept of kind of bringing up together diasporas, I mean, people who are all over the world and building up new structures. I think that India is, in this aspect, India is a joker. In cards game, we have a joker, like one of the cards, right? In cards game is a joker in international relations. What I mean with this is that, like, India has already built relationship with the West and the East, if we call it that way. This is very important in terms of playing the joker communicator role. What I mean is that, like, India, like, acting as that sole powerhouse of communication within the nations, and to do so, I think India must push that civilizational communicator role forward. That can be done with by different projects, like I don't know, organizing religious conferences, organizing cultural conferences, civilizational platforms, so that people from all over the world can feel safe within or under the Indian umbrella to talk about their concerns. I think this is a very big undertaking. I initially wanted to do this using the Armenian diaspora resources, but I realized that the Armenian nation is not capable of to run such an undertaking. Therefore, as I personally consider India as number one ally to the Armenians and Indian people on earth, I can say, and this also has connection with civilizational roots and ancient civilizational connections. I can say that India, considering its might, can definitely do this. I can definitely be of help with this if there is a interest among the government officers in India. So the second thing, the first thing is this joker communicator role and India acting as a powerhouse. The second important thing is the Indian diaspora. I think this is a must to accept that the Indian diaspora can play a pivotal role in exporting Indian soft power. And this is not just about like culture. This is not just about like I don't know, food or whatever. But I think it's also about this civilization powerhouse acting in different places on Earth, having this small Indian umbrella-like places where people from the host nations and expats from other nations can come, get together and act, like building up somehow Indian cultural civilization embassies in many places on Earth. This is the second important thing that I would suggest the Indian government and also big Indian organizations and also businesses to consider about. And the third thing is of course about this new pattern that is going on Earth now, is this intentional communities, charter cities, charter towns, private communities. I think this is also an important sector that Indian government and also big non-governmental organizations and businesses can focus on. For example, there are a lot of projects now. People want to build charter cities or private cities, intentional communities. India can play a pivotal role here because this is important. There is a high level of resentment now on Earth against what's going on. I don't know, this wars always happening, the decadence of moral values in many places, especially in the West, people trying to avoid high taxes in some European and Western countries, including US, Canada, right? So I think, and there is a huge wave of especially young and mid-aged people who want to escape this and build their own communities and charter cities in different parts of the world. I think India can jump in and play a pivotal role here, offering the huge civilizational wisdom that is coming from thousands of years of history, and also bringing up this value-based and faith-based. This is super important to mention. Faith-based, like a system, social system to the table. Definitely, I mean, I can tell more about, those projects because I am in one of these projects, like trying to build up charter town, catalyst city, catalyst town. But of course, those three things that I mentioned, like joker communicator in international relations, the Indian diaspora factor, and India stepping up in these charter cities, charter towns, catalyst cities, international community. I think this is these three can somehow help India to expand its power, especially now when we are facing a very tumultuous, capricious international climate, especially when Trump comes to power in the United States. And what I'm seeing now, very dangerous developments going on. Unfortunately, maybe we are going to see big explosions in terms of political explosions, like big wars are going on. That is why India, as a civilizational power, civilizational wisdom, can definitely work on these three aspects that I just shared to kind of build up India as a sole civilizational power to guide the world through the chaotic times towards peace and towards light. I think this is the biggest mission that I could see the Indian nation is capable of to do. And I personally believe that there will be millions of people who would follow this path if there is strong and serious interest from Indian government and big Indian organizations, because this requires huge resources, huge funds. But still, if this is put like a big kind of plan agenda to follow, I think many people on earth would definitely follow it, and India will become even more favorite place and favorite nation for many who long for peace and who long for moral values that are somehow indicators now on earth. So this is about my proposals, and just I want to add a couple of words about Armenia-India relations. I would insist on that India, of course, I know that the Indian government and Indian NGOs try to work in Armenia. They are doing their best. But my advice would be, and please do not, consider myself as an opposition or whatever, because I am not a party member and I do not care about domestic politics that much. I am absolutely certain that India will succeed in building up a good connection with Armenia if there is an Armenian government in power that represents the interests of the Armenian people and not the interests of someone else. So this is super important to acknowledge, and I want to use this platform to address to Indian people that the Armenian government does not have any connection with Armenian interests. So this is super important to understand, and that is why I truly want India to take up this civilizational big role and path towards big enlightenment, towards this difficult terrain, but we know that the result will be the light that we are longing for. So I would be happy to answer any questions you have, and I would be super happy to help any, Indian organization and Indian government officer with advice, or give more details with what I meant when I was saying that India is a joker communicator, India as a big diaspora power, and India stepping up in charter cities, charter towns, and these intentional communities. That is going on now on Earth. Thank you very much, and hope to accomplish this together.
Thank you, Vairam. Moving ahead, we have our next speaker, who is Dr. Devendra Kumar, and he is joining us from Riva University, Bangalore. Sir, if you can unmute yourself and start with your address. And I'll also request our team of meeting.
Mr. Siddharth, are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, we are just putting up your... Just a second, sir. Devin sir, please begin with your address. Meanwhile, we are just pinning up your video feed. Yeah. Yeah. Please. Yeah, Devin sir, please begin with your address. Thank you.
Dr. Jagannathan or the chair, any instructions?
Yeah, sir, if you can hear me, this is Siddharth from the team of Red Lantern Analytica. If you can hear me, please.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so we were muted. That's why I couldn't get to you, sir.
Okay,
You can now begin with your address, and it's 10 minutes for your address.
It's for me, right?
It
Yes.
will be a 10-minute address for your end, sir. Please, over to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, thanks to Red Lantern Analytica for inviting me to speak in this Siang Dialogue 2.0. Well, after listening to so many presentations, a few observations on this India's role in the transforming global order. There are few 4 strategic realities that we must accept before we get into discussion, or primarily to the key points that have been given a lot to me. First is what is the current state of the current world? The world is divided. You have United States, the US-led West, with other Western countries. On the other hand, you have the anti-American axis countries comprised of Russia, China, Iran, and the North Korea. So they're all competing. It has also kind of created a situation of some sort of a Cold War 2 kind of situation. That is ongoing. What is the current global order that we are facing? Is it really, or is it bipolar? As you see, the competition between the United States of America and Russia, the kind of warnings, competition, rivalry, as well as activities that are going on between these countries.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. My apologies for interrupting. My apologies for interrupting, Devin sir. It looks as if your microphone is a bit away from you, so I'll request you to keep your microphone near. Yeah.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. So I was focusing on the 4 this strategic, the realities of the contemporary global. First being the world is divided between US and US-led West and the anti-American axis. Second being the competition for the contemporary global order. Is it really multipolar, bipolar, or unipolar with the kind of warnings the current American president is giving to the world? And third thing is the questions that have been raised by the other speakers also before me, that about strategies that India is opting in the contemporary global order. The questions to its non-aligned strategy: is India really following the non-aligned policy, or in my opinion, it is strategic autonomy or multi-alignment at play without even giving up its or commitment to non-alignment strategies? And where do you situate India in this kind of contemporary global imbroglio that is going on in this world? You have China, which is already having trade war with the United States of America. We have the border issue with China, and on the other hand, the earlier speaker has already highlighted the dissatisfaction on the position on the occupation that China has done, and the kind of initiative that would have or standing would have come. But when it comes to situating India and how India shapes its global perception, well, I would say the Chinese have the checkbook, but India has knowledge. And how India is, through its knowledge, how it is building up on its knowledge diplomacy, its institutional outreach. That will be the major focus of my presentation today, like how India is going and targeting countries in Africa and West Asia, basically with the mantra of learning, exchanging, and sharing knowledge with this country, so that India has a sizable perception build up in Africa as well as other West Asian or Asian countries, ASEAN countries, so that it also projects itself as one of the major rising powers in the contemporary global order, irrespective of the current state of the contemporary global order. So the kind of policy initiative that India has come up with in the recent past would be the educational diplomacy, knowledge diplomacy, which India is using as a kind of strategic tool to enhance its soft power, also project India as a knowledge leader without antagonizing anybody, without taking advantage of anybody's economic resources, or without letting any country go in economic debt. Right. So Indian emphasis is basically on mutual exchange of knowledge and also creating the community of students which will benefit from this kind of initiative. And this is also being emphasized in the National Education Policy 2020, under which the emphasis has been to connect with the global institution and also to have joint degree programs and credit programs, having foreign faculties, foreign institutions in the same directions. India, the Southampton University is going to establish its campus or start its operation in Gurugram in August 2025. This year, you are having two universities from Australia, the Deakin University, Wollongong University, who have already started their operations in India, in Gujarat, in a city called Gift City. And there are other universities in pipeline, such as Queen University, Lancaster University, Coventry University, and there's also Johns Hopkins University based in the United States of America, which is considering having operations in India. So India, with all these initiatives, is trying to build up a perception or perspective with offering an authentic cultural immersion of academia with the foreign countries. And with this knowledge diplomacy, India has also strengthened its global position by bringing the world-class education in Africa, in West Asia. The IIT Madras has established its campus in Tanzania. The IIT is already established with Egypt, with UAE. They have already the MOUs with Egypt and Saudi Arabia are under negotiation. You have the National Forensic Science University having its campus in Uganda. You have Mahatma Gandhi University having campus in Rwanda. So all these initiatives are making India's present not by any force, but purely on academic and knowledge basis, which is a part and parcel of India's strategy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which considers world as a family. And through these initiatives, it reflects India's inclusiveness and empowerment, because through these initiatives, irrespective of the nationalities, the students from all walks of life can come and take benefit of all these initiatives. We have also started the Study India program, which is facilitating admissions to nearly 2,600 courses which are offered by India. And then also various scholarship programs offered by ICSSR, ICHR, and specifically targeting countries in ASEAN. And there's also scholarship, research training programs to further strengthen India's position as a knowledge partner in this globalized world that we are having. And specifically for SAARC and African countries, we are having this general cultural scholarship scheme, under which the India is, enhancing its mutual cooperation and facilitating the research and collaboration initiative with these countries. Apart from this, there is ITEC program also under which, under the Ministry of External Affairs. Basically, it's a training program based on the project, countries' needs and projects. So under which there are courses such as IT, on engineering, on agriculture, on health sector, with nearly 160 countries. So India is providing an opportunity for students to come and study in India, and also India is also having its campuses abroad. There's also started another initiative such as CTAP, the Cotton Technical Assistance Program. There's also Pan-African network project, basically to have collaboration and contribution on teleeducation, telemedicines with nearly 47 countries in Africa. And there's also eVidya Bharati, under which scholarship are being given to nearly 50,000 African students. And India is also one of the 5 major key destinations for African countries, students in African countries. And India is also trying to have the international collaboration under the NEP, which has a system for dual degrees, credit transfer, and collaborative research initiatives. So with all this, India has taken a long, very big initiative. But there's in my opinion, there's still, the journey is very long, and because the missing part in all this thing is, as far as the policy initiatives are concerned, because India does not have a culture of think tanks. Okay, so the number of think tanks is also in India is less in comparison to America and others. And if you look at the MEA, which is also functioning under staff, there's a less number of diplomats currently, in Ministry of External Affairs. So that in comparison to China and America, India's diplomatic presence is coming very, very low. So to compete with the global structure as it is, which is becoming a challenge between countries such as the US-led desk and anti-American axis countries, and with the rising presence of China, which has already led to debacle of countries in South Asian continent. With Sri Lanka is one example. You have Pakistan going to be the next. By any time it can be divided into 4. And Bangladesh is already on the verge of, it is already facing problem with the Sheikh Hasina, what has happened. And one panelist have already highlighted it is on the verge of becoming a biggest center for radicalization and terrorism, because with the debacle they're all seeing the impact we want to have in these countries. India will have to be very, very careful in terms of navigating this changing global order, and the knowledge diplomacy, educational diplomacy has become a tool, but India needs to do more in this realm to compete with countries such as China. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving ahead, our next speaker will be General Rakesh Sharma, and he'll be talking about India's security strategy in a volatile world. I'll also request our meeting team to pin up General Rakesh Sharma so that we can have his address.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can perfectly hear you, sir. You are also visible. Please move ahead with your address, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite for speaking today. I have been following the last few talks, and they were quite erudite and quite focused. So my subject is on largely threat assessment against India in the future. Now, firstly, future nobody knows. Anybody can predict. People keep predicting future, and most of the predictions don't tend to come true. Having said that, let's talk about the external threats first. And the domains of warfare has changed. The warfare is changing so fast that it is becoming increasingly difficult to keep pace with the kind of developments taking place. So initially, when we used to talk about warfare, we said there were domains of land, sea, that is maritime or air, and later on we spread across to space. Now we talk to cyber warfare, electronic warfare. So the dimensions are now changing and expanding quite a bit, and the technological change is so fast that a development actually gets obsolete in no time at all. So therefore, it becomes essential for us to examine what is the technological change and how does the technological change drive the strategy, and are we the strategy keeping in pace with the technological change happening in the globe? Then there are, of course, 3 dimensions of war. The dimensions of war is, of course, the basic dimension being physical dimension, which is land borders and seas and air spaces and space. And then, of course, there is information. Now, large amount of pressure is being brought across in the informational domain, which is causing great amount of problematic situations. Many countries have suffered because of information. You can, the Hillary and Trump elections, when the previous one, when Trump won the elections, there was obviously proven cases subsequently on how informational domains was misutilized to build up a case for President Trump that time and bring down Hillary. specifically coming as acquisition came up, this kind of electoral manipulation came across from Russia and China. And information domain, India also suffered in electoral manipulations earlier. In 2019, we found there was a Chinese app which was manipulating the minds of people by buying a large number of advertisements all over, which was anti the incumbent government. And they're having talks on the last year's elections also by Meta and by Microsoft that there were attempts to manipulate, and these were controlled in time. So the point is that informational domain is also expanding, the dimension is expanding greatly. And last is the cognitive, which is the brain, which is the new dimension coming up into warfare, which is brain dimension. Having said that, so the change is so great that to keep pace is not simple. And that becomes a challenge for security planners to say how to keep a pace with it. Now, we know that we have two larger adversaries, China and Pakistan. A lot has been spoken about China by previous speakers also, so I won't labor on it much. Suffice it to say that China is the largest manufacturer in the world. 30% of manufacturing in the world is done by the Chinese. 150 countries in the world have maximum trade with China. And the Chinese are, in matters of Belt and Road Initiative, developing and undertaking work in 127 countries. So suffice it to say, especially in the global south, Chinese have done great amount of work. 100 odd ports worldwide are being built by the Chinese. Even the ports in the United States, which is say the port of Miami or the port of Los Angeles, and in Israel, Haifa, in our neighborhood, 2 ports in Pakistan, 2 ports in Bangladesh. So the Chinese are all over the place in their desire to establish themselves in the global south, and they have been fairly successful in doing so. Now, having said that, China has always had adversarial relations against India. The borders that we have is the basic premise where things not work. But suffice it to say that the border was badly handled by the British in the 19th century. They gave 2 different lines of the border without actually taking Chinese into cognizance. There was also the border issues on McMahon Line in 1914, where a McMahon Line was decided between the Chinese and the Tibetans, and not taking between Sir McMahon, which is the British, and the Tibetans, the Chinese were not taken into cognizance. And then, of course, after McMahon Treaty was signed in 1914, 20 years there was no, the treaty was kept hidden by the British and not even told to anybody. So, when we got independence, the border was in turmoil. And the border has remained in turmoil of this kind until 2025. And that's because the Chinese have made no attempt to reconcile on the border, and their demands are quite significant. In 1962 war, they occupied the entire area of Aksai Chin, which, as per the British Johnson Line, was part of Indian territory. Now, having occupied it, that the territory is still with the Chinese, and they are also demanding the state of Arunachal Pradesh, which is our integral part of India. So there is a border issue, a significant border issue with the Chinese. We had, in the course of last 30 years, attempted to sign a large number of treaties and large number of agreements and confidence building measures to sort out this border issue, but it could not be sorted out. And we are now, stuck up until 2020, where the Chinese came in, occupied, denied us patrolling into our area, which what we call line of actual control. Partly it has been resolved, but partly there are issues and buffers being created where we are not able to patrol to the territory we were patrolling prior to 2020. So the border is as stands tense, and there is no significant movement to resolve the borders in a long-term perspective. So that is one part of the story. The second part of the story is the cooperation that we have with the Chinese. Now, as time is passing, it is clear that the global value chains are all controlled by the Chinese. If you want to buy something essential, which are not coming from China also, invariably there is a involvement of the Chinese industry into that country. So if you buy from Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, all larger industry is controlled by the Chinese. including in the West. And India does require assistance in this developmental stage. So it is absolutely essential to say that to de-link on matters of trade with Chinese is a Herculean task. It's not going to be easy, and we'll have to persist with this. So on one side, there is a border issue which can escalate at any one time. Now the Chinese are sitting on top of the borders, so a threat is existing now. And then there is an issue of cooperation, the trade. For example, I will say the APIs, which is the ingredients used to make antibiotics, are all brought from China. The minute we say so that we don't want Chinese goods, our own industry suffers tremendously because our exports, the final product gets assembly sub-products or raw material which comes from the Chinese, which are essential for the purpose of our own manufacturing here. And to say that we can just flip over is not an easy task. So we are in a cusp with Chinese, a threat, a significant threat on one side, and trade issues largely on the other side. Chinese have an Achilles heel. They're largely dependent on the Indian Ocean region for transportation of goods, especially the mercantile fleet that goes across the states of Malacca and through close to India. So they are conscious of the fact that their 80% oil comes from the Gulf and it is passes through close to India. And that's why the
Apologies
issue
for
that we are
interrupting,
anxious
sir.
about with India is the issue of geopolitics.
My apologies for interrupting, Rakesh sir, but I'll request you to wind up your address so that we can also wind up this session in the right time. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So we have a threat in China. We have a threat of Pakistan, who's very rational of being as a nation, is dependent on anti-Indianism, Jammu and Kashmir, and they won't be able to de-link the threat that we have against from the Pakistani side. So suffice it to say that we are stuck into this manner of these two conspiring neighbors who will remain as a threat against India for a long time. We will all to answer to all these questions, and I'll end here by saying that there is credible modernization on in India. Is creation of the CDS and the DMA itself was a very significant step government had taken. We have established agencies for space, for cyber, for fighting electronic warfare, and of course there is now movement across on integration of forces. So there is a significant step being carried out on modernization of the armed forces. I'll rest here and I'll take on the questions as required. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for elaborating on this topic. Moving ahead, we are joined by Dr. Ivan Ellis, all the way from Washington. And I'll now request our team to pin up Dr. Ivan Ellis. And I'll also request Dr. Ivan Ellis to begin with his address. If you can hear me, sir, over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me on your side? Yes? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can perfectly hear you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this very distinguished group. It's an honor for me. I'm coming. My position is as a civilian employee of our U.S. Army War College, Strategic Studies Institute. So I would just like to emphasize that what I'm going to share today are my personal academic views and don't necessarily represent those of the U.S. government. I have a very brief presentation I prepared for this. Let me see if. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share it right now. It's just one slide. Okay, can the group see the slide? Yes. Okay.
We can hear
Fantastic.
see your slide. Thank
Okay.
you.
I shared this with the group, and so this is available again, just a kind of a collection of thoughts with respect to India's engagement commercially and politically with Latin America and the Caribbean, and some of the strategic possibilities that I see with respect to that space, and happy to talk about how I see that progressing under the new Trump administration. So first, as many in the group know, there is a modest but important amount of trade by Latin America with India. It's actually expanded considerably over the past 20 years from, again, about $3.2 billion in 2002, right after China joined the World Trade Organization and its own trade began taking off, to about $52 billion today, according to the International Monetary Fund. It's relatively balanced. Patterns differ by countries, but again, about $24 billion in Latin America's exports to India. about $28 billion in India's exports to Latin America. So that contrasts with some of the more problematic trade relationships the PRC has with certain countries in Latin America. So it creates a certain favorable orientation from a Latin American standpoint, although frankly, the total amount of trade is only about 1/10 of what China-Latin America trade is, which attracts far more attention. However, there are, as you doubtlessly know, a number of different what we call multilatinas, internationally oriented Latin America-based companies, which do have an interest in the Indian market. And again, that continues to progress. Overall, also, one of the things, by contrast to some of the more problematic behaviors you have from Chinese companies, especially in some parts of the construction and mining sector, is that in general, Indian companies are regarded in Latin America as being relatively knowledgeable about market conditions, relatively good corporate citizens, and generally have had a meaningful amount of employment of local personnel, and again, that accounts for something in Latin America, especially in value-added sectors. And I mentioned a few just to give you an idea of the footprint that Indian companies have in the region. Of course, technology with Tata Consultancy Services, with other companies in the pharmaceutical sector, such as Dr. Reddy's, and to a smaller degree, Kaplan Point. As you know, some of the big Indian manufacturing sectors have a foothold in Latin America, especially the Tata Group and Mahindra. You have some important activities in Brazil and elsewhere in the food sector, Renuka with respect to sugar, United Phosphorus, to mention a number of others, and in the metal sector, especially in Brazil and in Mexico, but also in Colombia and elsewhere, ArcelorMittal, the Aditya Birla Group, and of course in petroleum, especially ONGC, and also a joint venture, part of that with a Chinese firm in Colombia for about 14 years now, Omnimex. Also, as you may be aware, there are several, at least tentative relationships by Indian companies in the defense sector, especially Hindustan Aeronautics, HAL, which has sold some of its lighter helicopters to Ecuador and some other countries. And of course, the defense portion of Mahindra, which has sold a number of light vehicles, especially in Central America. So there is a range of important activities, although, again, Indian companies don't get quite the recognition in Latin America that the Chinese companies do. But I would observe that some of the places where India, in its corporate presence, but also its diplomatic presence, is there, are places that are increasingly of strategic importance to the United States, and thus it highlights the possibility of India as a partner, especially in the Caribbean, where I imagine the group knows there is a relatively important Indian diaspora going back to the British Commonwealth days, especially in places like Trinidad and Tobago, and especially Guyana and Suriname, which are increasingly important actors in the region from an oil sector. And of course, the purchases and refining of Venezuelan oil, in part through Russian companies, through refineries in India itself. Beyond that, however, there have been impediments to India's advance in the region. My understanding is that the structure of the Indian Foreign Service really doesn't give a prominent place to Latin America. And there is often a frustration by some of the Indian companies and analysts I've talked to from India in terms of the level of support for business promotion that companies doing business in Latin America, especially the construction sector, get in Latin America. Beyond that, also, there is, in general, in Latin America, there's generally a lack of knowledge, with the exception of some countries like Guyana and Suriname, of India itself. One of the other difficulties that I would say is impeded engagement is that in general at the senior levels there has been a relative lack of senior leadership attention. This was actually this year was a bit of the exception. You had Prime Minister Modi actually visiting Brazil for the G20 summit, which was hosted in Brazil. And along the way, in addition to a stop in Africa, I believe Nigeria, Prime Minister Modi, of course, actually stopped in Guyana. That was, however, the first trip to Guyana that an Indian prime minister had made in, I believe, at least 20 years. And so, the exceptional nature of that, I think, illustrated part of the problem. There have been at the level of the external affairs minister some occasional trips, but again, I think in Latin America there's been a sense that it has not benefited from a significant level of Indian political engagement. Now, one of the interesting dimensions of India's ties to the region is the relationship, of course, of India as an important player in the BRICS, along with China and, of course, Russia. And of course, it's interesting to see how India in the G20 has tried to revitalize the IBSA organization, which used to compete with the BRICS, although the BRICS kind of overshadowed and caused the IBSA to be deactivated. Although I understand that at the G20, an initiative by Prime Minister Modi that didn't get a lot of traction, but it was interesting, was to try to revive the India, Brazil, South Africa group that meets. One of the things that I see also as an impediment on on the U.S. side when we think about possible U.S.-India collaboration in Latin America is, frankly, that with the exception of a small amount of scholarship, there really hasn't been a lot of thinking. I worked in the State Department under Secretary Mike Pompeo on the policy planning staff in 2019, 2020. And frankly, there was very little thinking, unfortunately, about how to work with India and Latin America, by contrast to thinking about how to work with Taiwan or Japan or South Korea or others. I think one of the other challenges, especially with the new State Department staff, obviously what we'd call a transactional orientation of President Trump, especially on the National Security Council side, because I would say that Marco Rubio on the State Department side is actually relatively sophisticated in his understanding of these things. But given that oftentimes there are tensions between India and the United States over interpretation of democracy, my sense is that that probably the direction that President Trump is taking, the U.S. May impede to a certain degree finding coincidences on working together with democracy and in aid programs in the region, especially to the extent that those are being scaled back to some degree. However, on the other hand, the interesting partnership that India has long had with Russia may open up some interesting doors to the extent that a new Trump collaboration with Russia itself makes Russia less I'll use the word less toxic for engagement in Latin America. So again, just some thoughts from my standpoint with respect to India and some of the promise of its role, principally led by the corporate side in Latin America. But those are my remarks. Thanks for the opportunity, and I welcome the chance to have questions from the group.
Thank you, Dr. Evangelos, for your elaborative address. And with that, we'll now like to move to our next speaker, SP Singh, sir. Sir, if you can begin with your address. Thank you.
Can I come and speak from there?
Please, absolutely.
I'll be more than happy.
I'll just request our team who is looking after the meeting to put up the presentation of SP Singh, sir. It's in the pen drive itself. Thank you.
Yeah, please. Good evening, team Analytica, my co-panelists, and the young future of India sitting right in front of me. Very good evening to all of you. And first of all, I must compliment all of you. We have been having a long session, and then with smiling face, you are still attentive. It is a great achievement, great thing. I'm very happy that our future of India is interested in looking about this strategic thing. So we are in the good hands. Okay. Thank you so much to all of you. Okay, I'll take just about 10 to 12 minutes. Most of the things have been covered by eminent speakers earlier, and I've been listening. But there are a few things which I just want to highlight, which have been told to me. Now, first thing, the topic is transforming and shaping the global order by India. What is the role of India? Now let's first understand how this global order word came in. As long as India was engaged with China on the northern border or the eastern border, land borders, okay, it was only India and China's problem. It didn't affect globe at all anyway. So we always engage in that. So most of the time we get engaged in China on our land border issues. The global issues became because earlier the two powers, the balance of power existed between Russia and USSR, erstwhile USSR, and there was a global order to that extent. As the USSR breakdown took place, with Russia having deploying power, the US became the single power of the world in a way. And with it expands over all across the globe. There are 11 fleets which are all across the globe. Their presence is there on almost every part of the globe. And a kind of global order was maintained as per the terms of the US. And this global order got imbalanced by the China expanding itself in the South China Sea. That is where this global order issue came up. Now this very quickly, China expanded in the last about 2 decades, and it is now edging into the entire Pacific. So this Indo-Pacific thing which came up was the one where it started at a modern thing, started as the Quad which came up in the Indo-Pacific just to humanitarian aid after the Boxer tsunami, where the late Prime Minister of Japan, he initiated, Shinzo Abe, and then the 4 democratic countries came as a part of it, Japan, Australia, India, and US. Now this Indo-Pacific became, why it became a disturbance in the entire global, that's what we are talking about today, global order. Because the entire energy flow, almost 90% of the energy oil flow is through the Indian Ocean region, IOR, which is entering into the Pacific. And this obviously will affect all the European countries as well as our countries east of us, that is the entire South Asian country, and up to Australia. So that is where the issue began when the China expanding its banks in these areas. This became a disturbance, and that's what the global order had to come in. And now we'll talk about how it. So I'll first start. First slide, please put the slideshow. First slide. Yeah, slideshow, please. Yeah, please see that. If you see the oil shipping lines, okay, are marked in the blue. That is all oil shipping lines are going west to east and all. What did China do? It increased its presence all across the Indian Ocean region, across India, inside that is between the land and the oil shipping lines. And this is what we term as string of pearls. You can read more about it, how did it happen. And this is how the China expanded itself. And now it was threatening the entire shipping line. We were making present, like what the earlier speaker had also covered, that in Pakistan, they have the Gular port, they have put their presence right up to South Africa, then into Sri Lanka. All this was aimed at threatening the oil shipping lines and putting their presence with the naval. The Chinese Navy has expanded almost 3 times in the last just about 10 years. But now they have the 3rd aircraft carrier, and they're saying by 2030 they'll have the 5 aircraft carriers. And with the aircraft carrier, if it is there, obviously one of them will be in the Indian Ocean region. That is what the problem will come up. They already gone to, if I say from the Air Force side, 5th generation aircraft. They got 2, J-20 and J-35. Also, they're giving J-35 to Pakistan. So all this is encircling the area, and this entire IOR region will get threatened. This is what the global order is being talked about. So this threat and how the India can play a role, that is what we'll talk about. Next, please. You all have heard about Quad, which is formed, but there are, like the Bansal sir brought out earlier, there are a lot of other bilateral agreements. So you see, there are a whole lot of them. Quad is in the center. Please, this same slide. Yeah. You got Quad Plus. Now what happened? In the Quad Plus, the South Korea wants to join, France wants to join, and all such countries want to join. So that is Quad Plus. As of today, Quad and Quad Plus is still a non-military agreement. So they're all for economic forum, for maintaining balance of power, maintaining the economic growth, interactions and all, various interactions at various levels. So those kind of things are their trade. But simultaneously, there are alignment on AGI is the America, Japan, India, and then is the JI, Japan, Australia, India, and then you have the RSC, RCP, you are available for AUKUS. Now, while the America wanted some military presence, because of the India's geographical location, which is dominating the Indian Ocean region, they wanted to create a military engagement other than Quad with India, which India denied to maintain its sovereignty. India has always resisted this, and then, so what the America did, they made a AUKUS. So this is now Australia, UK, and the US. So these three Anglo-Indian countries made a alignment. And now they are doing the military engagement to cover the Indo-Pacific zone. However, India is still opposing it and not yet part of it because of various reasons. Japan has given the tacit okay. So Japan has indirectly, not directly part of it, but giving the, if required, they will pitch in. So this is how the entire global disorder is now coming up for entire Indo-Pacific region. This is what this whole thing is about. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, I think slide is not coming to full frame. I'll just cover what is the AUKUS doing. Now look at the AUKUS. AUKUS, what has done? It is all around the China. So the Australia, US, and UK. Yeah, leave it like this. It's okay. We can, yeah, leave it like. So you see all the, if I just cover, see they are covered all around the China. Because military, US military has got the presence all across the globe. And similarly, there are various islands where they put the military presence. So it is to squeeze China so as not to expand itself into the Indo-Pacific. This is how the AUKUS was designed. So this is where India has no role in this. It is only purely between the America, UK, and US. Yeah, next please. Okay, now you can see the dynamic. I'll just read it. Basically, main problem now issue is, I hope all of you know what is the rare earth elements. The entire fight today is about rare earth elements. And this is how the entire China is expanding. And the reason is, because all your laptops, all your computers, all your missiles, all satellite, everything is on rare earth. And by the way, just to tell out here, China is the only country which has got all facilities, that is extraction of rare earth, they have the manufacturing, they have the refining and putting in this. Other countries like Australia and all, they have very limited facilities. So most of the countries are dependent on, so all your chip technology, microchip that we talk about, is still dependent on China. And China is way ahead in this. So this is the whole fight is on this, on rare earth element. This is where the issue is. So deep sea resources are being exploited. And that's why the, again, global issue came up. Okay. Offshore drilling, all those part of it. Next slide. So I'm quickly running it so I don't eat up, but main points are okay. You can ask me questions. Now look at this, militarization dynamics. So who are in the Indo-Pacific zone? China is main player as single opposing to everybody else. Then USA, India, Japan, Quad partners. Other nations which are now coming in are UK, France, Republic of Korea, Indonesia, Vietnam, ASEAN. Now ASEAN, Vietnam, Indonesia are subdued members because they cannot go gung-ho against China, because they're dependent on China for a lot of things. So, but they are a partner available. They at times of requirement, they may be this. So China is also putting itself to make military bases in these bases, in these places. And there's all the expansion is taking place. Next, please. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Now India's position, now this is where we come to. So look at, we are the primary player in the Indian Ocean region. Geographically, we dominated, both by sea and by air. We have our air bases in the southern part of India as well as in Andaman Nicobar. So we have enough aircraft, Su-30, Rafale, all those aircrafts are there, we dominated. Similarly, our Navy dominates because we can choke the points, which are the entry points, that's Strait of Malacca on the east. So our capability to choke that for China is very high. And that's where the issue is. So India, that's why is retaining its sovereignty and not being part of any AUKUS or any other military organization. We can retain our dominance here. Bay of Bengal is a regional fulcrum. Andaman I have already covered. Look East and Act East policy is building up. Now, India has got strong diplomatic relation in this region. Just to mention here, our Prime Minister has had a vision of making a Sagar, which is security and growth for all in the region. Under that Sagar concept, Sagarmala has been created. Now, Sagarmala is about 124 ports all across India have been developed. We are now only have 7 ports. So 124 ports of India. This will now add economic growth to our country because all the trade which are happening directly going to Singapore, ships will stop here now. Secondly, we have the launch bases. We also have the industrial growth. So it's a multiple gain from this Sagarmala project. That is what India is doing to what the topic we had. How can India influence the global order? So by this activity, which will be complete by 2035, we should be a global player in Indo-Pacific region. Next, please. Okay, balance of power, I'll just cover this. Next. Now look at this. This is what I was covering. The study landscape that India has got. This is the Malacca state. From there, the entire flow takes place, oil flow. And the closest is India. And we have reach of all our Su-30, even from the central India. Our Su-30s can reach there and dominate. Whereas we have a lot of bases in the south. And at any given time, we can do 24 hours patrol over the area. So with that capability, and the Chinese Air Force is far away, they do not have such long distance bombers to come in this area. Even if they come, they'll be under threat from our air defense sector. They do not have any radar in this area. They are trying to make inroads into the various smaller countries like Myanmar and all, which is obviously they are playing both ways. So this global order as of now with India's presence is controllable. However, it can change very quickly as the China comes in and improves its air power as well as the naval power. Next, please. Now, what we have done, while along the military growth, we also are doing diplomatic simultaneously. This is how the entire control has to be done in strategic relations. So India has started 2+2 ministerial talks with USA, with Australia, as well as Japan. And this 2+2 is our defense minister, our finance minister, with the counterparts. And these are regularly happening now. And this is how the entire issue is coming up. We all decide on all the global issues and the bilateral issues between these countries, because we are all part of Quad. So other than the Quad meeting, these are the major meetings that take place. And these are improving our strategy, improving our technology, improving our conditions. We can take a lot of technology change from the America, from Japan, and this is how it has taken place. So this is a new thing which has happened, which is going. So along with this, we do bilateral military exercise. Now, just to tell you, Indian Air Force in last year has done 32 air exercise with various countries of the world. One of them largest was the exercise Pitch Black, which was over Australia, where about 50 nations took part. And India was one of the major players. So this is a kind, whereas as opposite to this, China has got very limited friends, if I call it. They do not take part in any, world order air exercise. At the best, they have it Pakistan or some other country. So their exposure and their experience is much lesser than all our countries. So this way, and this kind of exercise. Similarly, we have a lot of exercise done with the Navy. Malabar exercise was already made, which is done biennially. All the navies of Japan, Australia, USA, and other countries take part in Indonesia. Once it happens in Indonesian region, once it happens in Pacific region close to Japan. So by this, we are showing our presence and countering China's threat in a diplomatic way as well as a military way. Next slide, please. Okay, now I'll just come to the meat of the matter. What are the options for India? Is to join a military pact like AUKUS, which we are denying. That's why I put a question mark there. But it doesn't do well with us. Because the moment we agree in military engagement with US, slowly we'll become like a slave to like Japan or South Korea. So we want to keep our autonomy. And that's why we are not part of military alliance. Then is to build an independent indigenous capability, which we are doing. You all must have heard about Atmanirbharta. We have moved way ahead. Just to tell you, in 2022, I was tasked by our NSA, Mr. Dubal, to carry out a revised policy of drones in India. So I was the chairman for that. During that, we found out that our country, the IITians and NITs, technical people, they were not exposed to doing research, and they were shy out there because they didn't have money. So once I wrote the policy, a presentation was done to PM. PM himself had allotted, he said, give 1,200 crore rupees to the younger people to do R&D. This is how the country is changing. So we spend a lot of money on R&D, and today I must tell you, we have now about close to 70, 75 drone manufacturing companies. And one of them, the best is Idea Forge, which has already launched its IPO. We've gone to that stage. So we have gone Atmanirbhar in this. Similarly, we are going Atmanirbhar in various other technology forums. And this push will make us at a global standing. And that's why I said we need to be more onto Atmanirbhar, and that's what is required. To just give a small example, Ukraine was fighting a war with Russia on everything given by other countries. So that is no war. You can lose and it can be stopped. But here, Atmanirbhar matters. So this is what India's choice is. And then is to engage in diplomacy. At the end of it, if you can win a war without firing a bullet, that is the best strategy. Okay? You don't. So that is where diplomacy comes into play. But the diplomacy is effective if you got the military backing. If you don't have military backing, nobody will listen to you. So that's why it has to be a very balanced thing. That's how the India can affect the global order. Next slide. Yeah, so this is the thing which India must do. Few things you can read it. Is retain its sovereignty. That is most important in Bay of Bengal and Andaman Nicobar. Build infrastructure, which we are already doing, Sagarmala. Then joint military exercises, which is very important. The more exercise you do, the more prowess you get, the compatibility comes in, and in times of war, they can reach to each other. And then conduct multilateral diplomatic, economic, military engagements. Expand mutual cooperation. Now, this is very important with the neighboring countries. Like we are engaging with USA, we are engaging with Australia, but we have to take the neighboring countries. And since they are smaller countries, we need to engage them. We need to get them together. But they also have fear of China taking over. There is no doubt about it. And then review military capability. So this is where the India diplomatically, militarily can cause a change in the global order, can be a big player in the global order. Okay, so this Indo-Pacific region will be a region of disturbance where we have to play a role. With that, I come to the end. I hope I haven't taken much time of yours in this thing. And I'm open to any questions. And thank you for a patient listening.
Thank you, sir, for your elaborative address. And this brings us to the end of this session. And I'll just ask one very small question to Major Amit Bansal, sir. And that is that you have served in the infantry and you have experience of fighting. Now, once I'm talking about the army preparedness front, how will you rate the preparedness of Chinese forces? Because Indian military, we know, have been engaged into counterinsurgency and many such affairs. So how role do you think it plays as the mental preparedness of a soldier if he or she is fighting? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Siddhartha. So there are two kinds of preparedness. You have one technological part and you have one human part. So when it comes to human part, we are way ahead of China. If you see a Chinese soldier, he's from the mainland China. He's from the Beijing or maybe Shanghai or maybe all these areas. He is not very much equipped or maybe acclimatized to fight in the mountains. On the other hand, what we have? We have Nepalis, we have Dogras, we have Himachalis, we have Kashmiris, and we have all sort of soldiers who are... SFF is different, of course, altogether, but we have soldiers who are born and brought up in mountains, who knows how to fight in mountains. For them, mountain is something like a home. So India gets an edge when it comes to human factor. We saw in the recent Galwan incident when India went ahead and occupied the Kailash range. We had soldiers. Kailash range, which was considered very inhospitable range, very a location where people thought that it's very difficult for humans to go. We went ahead and occupied it without any acclimatization. Second part. In China, their soldiers don't get an opportunity to fight or stay or practice their warfare capabilities in a high altitude environment. What we have, each and every soldier, you talk about infantry or maybe artillery, maybe other arms, goes at least 2 to 3 times during his service to Siachen Glacier. He also served 3 to 4 times in various high altitude areas like Arunachal Pradesh, or maybe in the Kashmir, or maybe in Himachal. So every soldier is not only equipped, also practiced the high altitude warfare. So that's where we get an edge over China. No, technology is a different part altogether.
With this, we come to the end of this session. It has been a long day with 3 sessions. I do understand that. That being said, if any participant has any small question, very small, because we have already offshot time, okay? Very small, very brief questions you can ask. Just 2. We are taking just 2. And, okay.
So I have a question from Amit sir. My name is Manya Swaroop from Christ University. So India being a neutral state, as you said. So as India, is India afraid to take side? Because India, it is at a point where it can take advantage of different global conflicts. So like, is India afraid to take sides and being neutral?
I did not say that we are neutral. I did not say that we are non-aligned. See, the times of non-alignment are over. We are now multi-aligned. We are aligned with everybody, depending upon our interest. India is supplying weapons and war machines to different countries. We are supplying to Vietnam, we are supplying to Philippines. We are also trying to clinch deals with other countries. So for us, it is time to emerge on the top position in the global order. So it's not that we are non-aligned. It's not that we are not neutral. Those times are over now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Pratik Trivedi from Christ University. My question is from Air Commander SP Singh, sir. Jain, sir. If India has to become a global power, its military needs to be very strong. We are all aware of the fact that Indian Air Force is struggling with the induction of 5th-gen aircraft. For jet engines, we are dependent on America. Moreover, we need 42 squadrons, but we are only operating 31 squadrons. How we will overcome all this?
Yeah, see, a very good question. See, global power, when you have to become, the first is we have to become regional power. Okay. So for the regional power, we need to have the 41. There is no doubt about it, because we are the only country in the world which have got 2 nuclear capable enemies. Okay, bordering with us. So that apart, rest of the things we have all along the, if you see our South Asian neighbors and everybody else, we are now becoming the first responder. I'll tell you how you become global power. Whenever this COVID issue came up, we have supplied the medicine to almost every country in this region. And that's how you build relations, diplomatic relations. So when you make friends, when you make, country will stand by you. So in the UN, we are getting more and more support from various countries. You see the reach out today we have to multiple countries. In the G20, what did we do? What did the Prime Minister do? He made the African Union as the member, which has never happened. G20 are based on something else, but we got them as the 21st member. Now, this is where you send signals and you build friendship. You build strong ties with various nations. And that's the step forward to China. What is doing is doing by making people slaves, economic slaves, okay, by debt trap, by the Build and Road initiative, BRI, which is a totally, after some time people will give up. They'll understand. China is trying to make you slaves and take your the same country for right. Whereas we are doing the other way around. When you do like this, you become a acceptable global partner. Okay, China after some time gets hated, but we become acceptable. And when you take people along with you, this is how we are building. So military power is not the only that if you don't have so many squadrons, it doesn't matter. Diplomatic, first is you have to make the diplomatic friendship, and that binds on the military. Then that's why I said start doing military exercise with the neighboring countries, because they have very less military power, but engage them. And this engagement over years of, let's say 10 years, 20 years or decades, we will become a very strong country. That's how you become a global. So there are different ways of becoming global power. Okay?
It is with great pleasure and gratitude that I extend this vote of thanks to the conclusion of the day of one of the Siang Dialogue. And I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say that today was a very thrilling day with thought-provoking debates and valuable exchanges on issues of various topics. I extend my sincere appreciation to our esteemed speakers, panelists, and our participants as well, who have been through all the 3 sessions. A heartfelt thanks to our speakers, Air Commodore S.P. Singh sir, Major Amit Bansal, Dr. Shripanna Pathak, Tanjik Sanjay for gracing this session in person, and Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, Varam, Dr. Devendra Kumar, and Dr. R. Ivan Ellis for joining us virtually. Your contributions have been enlightening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you.
And
Thank you so much.
with these words, we conclude today's session of Siang Dialogue. We also have 3 sessions tomorrow, but these will be held virtually. So we'll also be sharing the links of those sessions. The meeting links remain same for all the 3 sessions. They will be available on our social media handles. With these words now, I bring this session to a close with our permission to all our speakers. Yeah.
I have a small announcement. I have these 2 books for sale outside. These will tell you more about the Tibetans living in India, their stories, especially their personal stories. These are only for 50 rupees, the cheapest book in the world. So there are copies outside. Please buy copies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shall we move?
So please come forward for a picture as we have done for all the sessions. Thank you.